She sighed. I'm not ready. I answered. Then I'll wait as long as you need. I still remember the first time she let her fingertips rest on the back of my hand. It wasn't even a touch. Not really. More like a question she didn't finish asking. But it stopped me in the middle of whatever I was saying, my words breaking apart in my throat like dry bread. She sat across from me at the café's smallest table, the one near the frosted window. Early evening light spilled in a muted gold that caught the edge of her hair. 40-something, maybe mid-forties, but age clung to her like a silk scarf. Visible, yes, but elegant, a choice rather than a burden. She stirred her tea slowly, eyes fixed on the swirl, then up at me, as if she'd rehearsed the movement. You're quiet, she said. Her voice was low, even, the kind that carried without ever rising. I'm watching, I replied before thinking. Her brow arched, faintly amused. Watching what? You. I tried to smile, but it came out more like a confession. She let the silence stretch. Only the clink of her spoon against porcelain, the hiss of the espresso machine somewhere behind us. She had that effect, turning public space private without effort. When she finally looked back at me, the shift in her gaze felt like heat under my skin. Not overt. More like standing too close to a fire you didn't notice had been lit. I'm not. She stopped. Inhaled, exhaled. I'm not ready. The way she said it, soft, almost apologetic, but holding a hard edge underneath, made my throat tighten. I'll wait, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. As long as you need. Her lips parted slightly, then closed. She folded her hands together, fingers lacing and unlacing. A small tremor flickered at her knuckles, gone as soon as it came. She turned her face toward the window, but her eyes didn't focus on anything outside. I could smell the faint citrus of her perfume mixed with tea steam. When she shifted, her knee brushed mine under the table. Not enough to be an accident, but not quite intentional either. You don't know what you're offering, she murmured. Maybe not, I said, but I know I mean it. She gave a small, incredulous laugh. You're too young to. Another pause. Never mind. I leaned forward, elbows on the table, careful not to crowd her. Then tell me what I should know. Her gaze flicked down to my hands. Open, palms up, then back to my face. The muscles at the corner of her jaw worked once, twice. Her lips pressed together as if holding back words. Outside, rain began to prick at the window, small dots gathering into streaks. The cafe lights reflected in the glass, blurring her profile, making her seem both close and untouchable. I don't, she started again, then shook her head. It's complicated. I wanted to say something light, to ease the tension, but the weight between us felt like a cord strung too tight. Instead, I reached out, slow enough for her to pull away, and brushed my fingers against the back of her hand. Her skin was cool from the tea glass, then warm as she let me linger a heartbeat longer than necessary. Her breath caught, a sound so faint I might have imagined it. Then, from the cafe entrance, a sudden voice called her name. She blinked, drew her hand back quickly, and turned. I followed her eyes to the doorway, and saw someone standing there, dripping from the rain. The man at the door turned out to be only the barista calling out her forgotten umbrella. She rose to take it, thanked him with that careful half-smile she gives strangers, then came back to the table. A few drops dotted her sleeve, darkening the fabric. Thought you knew someone, I said, trying to sound casual. My voice cracked anyway. She shook her head, brushing rain from her arm. No, just another small mercy. She folded the umbrella, set it against the wall. When she sat, the space between us felt even tighter, as if the rain had sealed the windows and thickened the air. I'd known her for 3 months, Thursday evening language classes at the community center. I was the one who stayed after, helping clean up papers, just to hear her voice without the classroom echo. She never gave more than her first name. The only thing she mentioned about her life was a house she was remodeling, and even that sounded like a deflection. You're married? I asked once back then. She'd simply said, was. Now, as she settled back into the chair, I caught the faint outline of a silver ring mark still ghosting her finger. It explained the way she always looked around before leaning close, the way she seemed both present and half absent, as though waiting for someone else's permission. I forced my eyes to the window, but my reflection betrayed me. The way I kept watching her mouth when she spoke, the small tremor of her hands before she wrapped them around the cup. You keep staring, she said softly. I'm sorry. I straightened. Habit. What kind of habit? The kind where you notice things you shouldn't. She gave a low breath that might have been a laugh. That's dangerous. I know. We sat without speaking for a moment. She leaned forward to retrieve her bag, her shoulder brushing my arm. It wasn't an accident. There was too much deliberateness in the slow way she moved. Yet she pulled back immediately, eyes on the floor as if she'd dropped something invisible. I didn't mean, she started. You don't have to explain, I said quickly. Her gaze met mine then, steady, searching. Rain rattled harder on the window. She reached across the table, ostensibly to move the sugar jar closer, but her fingers grazed my wrist. Not a full touch, more like testing the temperature of water. I didn't move. The pulse under my skin thudded against her fingertips. She lingered half a second longer than politeness required, then withdrew, curling her hand into a fist on her lap. It's not supposed to be like this, she murmured. Maybe not, I said, but we're here anyway. She drew a slow breath, eyes still locked on mine. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she reached up, brushed an errant drop of rain from my hair, a small, instinctive gesture, and let her hand fall, trembling just slightly, between us. Her fingers had just brushed the rain from my hair when her phone vibrated on the table. The sound was small, but sharp, a single pulse that cut through the hush of the cafe. She snatched it up too quickly, glanced at the screen, turned it face down. You should answer, I murmured. She shook her head, almost imperceptibly. It can wait. But her thumb kept circling the phone's edge, nervous, like someone smoothing a worry stone. I leaned back, tried to slow my breathing. Friend. Not exactly. She took a sip of tea that had already gone cold. Her eyes flicked to the door, then back to me, as though measuring exits. The rain outside had thickened into sheets, people huddled under the awning. One of my classmates from Thursday night, Mara, darted inside, scanning for a seat. My stomach lurched. I saw her eyes start to pass over our table, then double back. Don't look, I whispered. But she did. Our gazes broke apart like startled birds. Mara headed to the counter, thank God, but she was close enough to hear if we spoke too loud. She knows you? The woman asked quietly. She knows both of us, I said, voice low. From class. Her mouth tightened. Then sit back. I obeyed, forcing a gap between us. But the gap only made the air hotter. We stayed like that, two islands, while Mara ordered coffee, until the hiss of milk steaming covered our silence. You're too young for this, she said at last. You keep saying that, I replied. But you're still here. Her eyes closed briefly, lashes trembling. It's wrong, she whispered. Then tell me to stop. She opened her eyes, but didn't speak. The phone buzzed again. She ignored it, placed both hands flat on the table. My own hand moved halfway toward hers before I caught myself. Short beats now, a glance, a breath, a tremor. Her knee brushed mine under the table. I inhaled sharply. She looked away. Her fingers tightened on the edge of the table. I leaned in, not even thinking. You don't understand what this would cost me, she said. I'm trying to, I answered. My voice felt thin. Another silence. Outside, thunder rolled low. Mara gathered her coffee and hurried out without looking back. The door closed, leaving just us and the rain. We both exhaled at once. She laughed, a quick, brittle sound. Almost got caught. I found myself leaning forward again. Our faces were close now. Too close, the scent of citrus and rain between us. Her breath brushed my cheek when she spoke. You should go, she whispered. But she didn't move away. Neither did I. For a heartbeat, maybe two, the world narrowed to the space between our mouths, not touching, but close enough to feel the pull. Her hand rose as if to push me back, but instead she let her palm rest lightly on my shoulder. We stayed like that, suspended, the rain hammering the windows, both of us caught between retreat and something we couldn't name. Her palm still rested on my shoulder. It should have been a light touch, but it anchored me in place. My pulse thudded under her fingers. She stared at them, as if surprised she'd let them land there. You have to stop looking at me like that, she whispered. I've tried, I said. My voice was low, rougher than I meant. She drew back a fraction, eyes searching mine. You're making this impossible. Then tell me to leave. Her breath caught. She didn't. Instead, she reached up, brushed a damp strand of hair from my forehead. The tips of her fingers grazed my temple and lingered a second too long. My eyes closed without thinking. When I opened them again, her face was inches from mine, pupils wide, lips parted as if she'd forgotten the next word. I don't want to hurt you, she murmured. You're not hurting me. I leaned closer. You're the only one who's seen me. Something flickered across her face, regret, maybe, or recognition. She shifted forward until her knee pressed firmly against mine under the table. The scent of citrus and rain wrapped around me. I could feel the warmth of her breath on my cheek. You don't know what it's like, she said. People will talk. They'll think. She trailed off, shaking her head. I can't lose everything again. I hesitated. Again. She swallowed hard. When my marriage ended, everyone had an opinion. I barely survived that. I can't, she stopped. I shouldn't be here. But she didn't move. Her hand slid from my shoulder down to my forearm, fingers curling lightly. I could feel the tremor in her grip. Then why are you? I asked. Her eyes filled with something sharp. Hunger, guilt, fear, tangled together. Because I think about you when I shouldn't, she said. Because you look at me like I'm not broken. Silence pressed in. Only the rain, the hiss of the espresso machine, the sound of our uneven breaths. My hand rose, slow, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. She let me. My knuckles skimmed the curve of her cheek. Her eyes fluttered shut. I'm scared, she whispered. Me too. My lips almost grazed her ear as I spoke. But I don't care. She opened her eyes. For a heartbeat, she leaned into me, forehead against mine, our noses nearly touching. Her fingers slid to the back of my neck, light as a pulse. The world narrowed to the thin line of air between our mouths. She started. Then the cafe door banged open. A gust of wet air and voices rushed in. She jerked back, eyes wide, but her hand still clutched my sleeve, knuckles white. We froze like that, still joined, still on the edge, as a shadow fell across our table. The figure in the doorway stepped closer, water dripping from his coat. At first I thought he was just another customer. Then he said her name, not the one she used in class, but another. A softer version, private, spoken like a claim. Her WH. Whole posture changed. Shoulders drawn in, chin lowered. The grip on my sleeve loosened, but didn't fall away. She didn't look at me. She looked at the man. You shouldn't be here, she said quietly. I had to. His voice cracked. You haven't answered my calls. I glanced at her phone lying face down, buzzing faintly again. My stomach sank. She'd lied, or maybe just hadn't told me. Whatever we were building wasn't just secret, it was contested ground. I told you it was over, she said. You didn't tell me about him. His eyes flicked to me, then back to her. Is he what? She inhaled sharply but didn't reply. The silence was worse than any confession. Her fingers slipped from my sleeve, retreating to her lap. For the first time she seemed small, almost cornered. I stood slowly. I should go. No, she said, too quickly. She reached out, caught my wrist, then let it go just as fast, as if burned. Please just sit. The man took a step closer, voice low but shaking. You can't do this again. You promised after. She cut him off. Enough. Her voice rose, not loud but edged. This isn't your decision. I sat, but every muscle in me was coiled. She kept her eyes on the man, but her knee brushed mine under the table, a tiny, involuntary touch, like she was grounding herself. He exhaled hard, looked at me again. You're young. You don't know what she's like. That's enough, she said again, softer now. Her hands trembled as she reached for her cup, found it empty, set it back down. She looked at me finally, eyes wet but steady. I should have told you, she said. I'm not free. Not yet. The words hit harder than I expected. I wanted to pull back, but she leaned in, brushing past my arm as she stood. Her hair grazed my cheek. I felt the shiver in her as she passed. I'm sorry, she whispered near my ear. But I can't let go of you either. Then she turned to the man. Leave, she said, barely audible. Please. He hesitated, then walked out into the rain, the door swinging shut behind him. The cafe went quiet again except for our breathing. She sat back down, closer than before, so close our shoulders touched. Her hand found mine under the table and held it, trembling. I have to choose, she said, staring at the window. And if I do, there's no going back. We stayed at the table long after the man left, as if the rain had sealed us inside. Her hand still held mine beneath the edge, fingers trembling but unrelenting. She stared at the window but didn't see it. I stared at her and saw too much. I can't keep you waiting, she said finally. It's cruel. You're not cruel, I murmured. Then what am I? She turned to me, eyes raw, no makeup left, only the soft lines of exhaustion and something fierce underneath. A coward? No, I said. Someone scared. So am I. She exhaled a shaky laugh. God, you're young. And you're here. My voice dropped, almost a whisper. That has to mean something. The rain softened to a misty hiss. The cafe was nearly empty now, chairs stacked on tables at the far end. The barista wiped counters, pretending not to notice us. We were two figures in a shrinking island of light. She slid her hand from mine and stood. For a second I thought she was leaving, but she walked around to my side of the table and stopped, inches from my chair. The citrus of her perfume mixed with the warm scent of wet wool. My heartbeat filled my ears. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Show me, I said. She reached down, traced her fingers along my jaw, a hesitant line. If we cross this line, I lose the person I've been, she said. Maybe you lose something too. Maybe we find something, I answered. Her eyes closed briefly, then opened, dark and steady. She stepped closer until our knees touched, her coat brushing my leg. She was trembling. So was I. We both leaned forward at the same time, foreheads touching, breaths mingling in the narrow space. I'm choosing you, she breathed. I drew in a sharp breath, not trusting my voice. My hand rose and cupped the back of her neck. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned into it, pressing her palm flat against my chest as if to feel my heart. I don't care who sees, she whispered. Not anymore. I could feel her words on my lips before she finished them. For a moment we hovered there, suspended, our noses brushing, eyes locked. Every hesitation, every secret lay between us, but it no longer felt like a wall. She opened her eyes fully, searching mine. This is me, she said softly. No hiding. I swallowed hard. This is me too. We both let out a breath at the same time. Not a kiss yet, but a clarity. The fear had burned off, leaving only the truth of what we wanted and what we were about to risk. When she finally smiled, small, trembling, but real, it felt like stepping out into the rain together without an umbrella. We left the cafe together just before closing. The rain had slowed to a thin drizzle, soft enough to walk through. She opened the umbrella but didn't step ahead. Instead, she held it, so we were forced close, shoulders pressed. The world smelled of wet asphalt and citrus and the faint sweetness of her hair. For a while we didn't talk. Our footsteps matched. Every so often her fingers brushed mine, tentative, like she was still testing the ground. Finally, I just reached out and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Her palm was cool at first, then warm, the grip tightening as we crossed the empty street. I thought I'd never do this again, she said quietly. Walk in the rain? I tried to tease. Let someone close. She looked down, then up at me. I told myself it was too late, that I'd already lost my chance. You didn't, I said. Not with me. Her thumb moved over the back of my hand, slow, absent-minded. I hated the way people looked at me after my marriage ended, she murmured. Like I was a story they already knew. That's why I hid. And I hated being invisible, I said. That's why I kept staying. After class, she gave a small, genuine laugh. So we found each other. Under the dim glow of a street lamp, she stopped walking. The umbrella tilted, rain catching her hair in dark strands. She turned toward me, close enough that our breaths mingled in the cool air. Are you sure about this? She asked. No, I said honestly. But I know what I want. Her eyes softened. Me? You, I said. Something in her face loosened, the tension that had held her jaw tight for weeks. She stepped into me then, resting her forehead against mine, eyes closed. I slid an arm around her waist, felt her exhale against my neck. Not a dramatic kiss, not yet, just the weight and warmth of her leaning fully into me at last. I'm still scared, she whispered. Me too. I pressed a small kiss to her forehead. But we're here. We stood like that for a long moment, rain pattering gently around us, the umbrella dripping at the edges. Our fingers intertwined, fitting easily now, no trembling. She drew back just enough to look at me, smiling, small but certain. Okay, she said. Let's see where this goes. We started walking again, slower this time, still under the same umbrella. The street stretched ahead, slick and shining. Neither of us looked back at the cafe. For the first time, it didn't feel like hiding. It felt like the beginning of something neither of us had dared imagine, but both had chosen anyway. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?